Well, Professor Zisser, thank you very much indeed for sparing time to join us on the programme today. It has been an unforgettable year in the Middle East. The Arab Spring, the uprisings, all across parts of the Arab world. Has that steam run out now? Is the Arab Spring over, or is there more to come?
Well, what we had was an early spring in the middle of the winter, and then unfortunately it turned to be a hot summer. Yemen, Libya, Syria, you name it. So I'm afraid it's not anymore the spring we witnessed at the beginning of this year. It turned to be an ugly, bloody, long struggle for power in many of these countries, far away, you know, from all those expectations of the young people we saw in the streets of Cairo or Damascus.
Because there was real hope, wasn't there?
Yes.
Particularly in Libya, that hope for change.
Yes, indeed, but you know, Libya is entirely different than Egypt, because Egypt is a state of institutions. You have the army, and the army decided to separate itself from the ruler. Take, for example, Syria. The regime there based itself upon the support of, you know, ethnic, tribal groups. So the Syrian army cannot separate itself from the regime, because the defense minister is the uncle of the president, one of the commanders of one of the leading division in the Syrian army is the brother of the president. They can't separate themselves from the president. They all know that if he goes, they go with him. So that's why it will be endless bloody struggle.
Because the Syrian regime's been in place for, what, 40
years. The Assad dynasty got to power in 70, so it's almost 40 years.
But when Assad first came in, he was actually seen as possibly an agent for change, wasn't he?
Yes, a reformer. But the reforms he had in mind was to open new hospitals, new schools, you know, to bring advanced technology, not to change the system from within, not to introduce democratic system, not at all. So this is the kind of reformer he was, and we see it right now.
What's the feeling in Israel? Because you're based in Tel Aviv. So what's the feeling there when you sort of look across your borders and you see unrest in Egypt, you see unrest in Syria? What's the feeling at home?
You know what was we can say we all fall in love with the stability we witnessed during the last several decades, and we like this stability. You know, this regime, regardless of how dictatorial they were committed to the peace process, to the peace agreements they signed with us. Now there is a change. There are those who see it as some sort of threat for Israel, you know, the possible emergence of Islamic groups, chaos, anarchy. There are those who say, well, maybe this is some sort of a window of opportunity, you know, because young kids in the streets of Cairo, like my kids, you know, playing the same music and expressing their, you know, hopes for a better future for Egypt, for the entire region. And something very significant, Israel was not mentioned at all during these demonstrations in the Arab streets all over the Arab world. I mean, it was not about Israel. Israel was left out of the picture. This is something very good.
Which is makes a nice change.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's quite interesting that I saw there have been protests just in the last couple of weeks in Israel about the cost of living, which was part of the driver of the Arab protests as well. So could there be an uprising in Israel?
Well, we're not speaking about uprising, but this is the domino effect. You know, we are part of the Middle East. If you listen to these young people in the streets of Tel Aviv, they use the same slogan. You know, in Arabic they say, "Sha'ab yuridu iskat nizam." The people want to get rid of and in Tel Aviv they said the people want Netanyahu to go home. Okay, so clearly there is this domino effect, and yes, it had to do with the economy in Egypt, in other Arab countries. You know, the economy did well, but the question was who benefited from this economic booming. The Israeli economy did well, we witness an economy booming, but here is the question. I mean, who benefited? And clearly not the middle class. And that's what the protest is all about. It can lead to the fall of the Netanyahu government, but not the way it happened in Cairo, but through pressure on members of the parliament and on political parties that are part of the coalition, and that can lead to an early election, no doubt about it.
Coming up very soon in September, there's going to be the UN vote on the recognition of a Palestinian state.
Yes.
That's going to be quite a hard one, because what state will they get? Will it be Hamas, Fatah, Hamas and Fatah? What will be the...
Well, we speak of two states solution. Actually, we'll have three states. Hamas state in Gaza, Fatah state or PLO state in the West Bank, and Israel. It's it's really a big question, a big challenge, but it will take place in the UN. I think it will have no effect on the ground in the West. In the West Bank, it will not lead them anywhere. I think they also do understand it. I mean, the only fear we have is from the eruption of another intifada, another uprising, because the Palestinians also are being influenced by, the Arab Spring. They might rise against their own leaders, Hamas in Gaza and the PLO in the West Bank, but they can also turn against Israel. So we'll have to follow these events very closely.
What's the feeling in Israel about that? I mean, I hesitate to use the word interference, but the EU and the USA charge in relatively frequently and tell everybody what to do.
Yeah.
What's the feeling among people in Israel?
Well, we don't take them too seriously. The EU is all about condemnations and the United States. Well, this is committed ally of Israel. Of course, you should take President Obama much more seriously, but here we come to American politics, and unfortunately for us, because we are close ally of the Americans, Obama is perceived in the Middle East as a very weak and decisive leader with some sort of a vision, but with no real strategy. People were very upset with the way he treated Hosni Mubarak. I mean, because suddenly, after 30 years, he discovered that Mubarak was a dictator. I mean, if he was a dictator, you should have told him that, many years ago. But to discover it one day after the eruption of the uprising in Egypt, and to tell him in one day, you should go, something Obama didn't tell to Bashar al-Assad of Syria or to Gaddafi. Well, many people in the Middle East thought that that was not the right way to treat your committed allies.
It's a very complex situation for an outsider. I've been following it for more years than I care to own up to, but to an outsider, it's quite hard to fathom what the eventual outcome will be. Could you see a time when you can find some agreement between the Palestinian authorities and Israel that you can coexist?
Yes, I think that, historically, when you look back, the 40s, the 50s, the Arab world rejected Israel, wanted Israel to disappear from the map, and all what he had in mind was the second round and the third round of fighting against Israel. Now there is much more readiness among Israelis as well as among Palestinians to come into terms. I mean, we need only to find a way. It's always the question of who is to make the first move and who is to follow, and what steps should be taken. But I do believe eventually we'll get there one day.
It's fascinating.
As we say in Arabic, inshallah.
It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.